So Syed, we mentioned earlier, is actually bringing in likely something like 8 cards at least. The real question is, what do you take out with this deck? Affinity is, as I mentioned before, there's a lot of air to go with the real whammies in Affinity, but you can't cut too much of it or else the whammies stop being whammies.
So I think you can pretty safely cut Welding Jar in this matchup because Ross is not going to interact with you on that level. I think the Etch champions are also poor in this matchup. Again, that's not really what the game's about.
Sure.
So that frees up 6 slots, and we're looking at 6 cards we definitely want to bring in, and then Thoughtseize and Envelop, which are borderline cards.
Okay.
So it's pretty easy to at least free up the 6 slots, I feel like. Beyond that, it's hard to say.
Okay. And Quirion Ranger, the 1-drop of choice for Ross Merriam. And we'll see if Syed has the dreaded Grafdigger's Cage or just your standard unfair Affinity opener. He's off with Inkmoth Nexus, a free Welding Jar, and a Grafdigger's Cage. So there we see Welding Jar actually doing a ton of work.
Yes, it's very good in concert with Grafdigger's Cage if Ross has brought in Abrupt Decay. So,
yeah, Ross. What do you do once Grafdigger's Cage is on the play? You basically have to kind of go off with Glimpse, naturally draw a Crater Hoof and cast it, which is a tall order, but not impossible by any means.
It makes his opening a lot less explosive. He can still win the game. The thing is, in concert with Whip Flare, it really punishes Ross potentially because Ross has to play a slightly slower game, and then Whip Flare becomes devastating when Ross has to build up his board kind of naturally.
Yeah, for sure. And Syed going to have a turn 2 Phyrexian Revoker. We're still waiting to hear on what that name. That was Wirewood Symbiote, which came down on turn 2 there for Ross. So that's going to shut down the potential Elvish Visionary loops. That's kind of the plan C that you see Elves enact a lot of the time to kind of dig through their deck and set things up. I did catch a glimpse of a natural order there in Ross's hand. I think that was plan A for Ross, but that's not going to work as long as that Grafdigger's Cage stays in play.
So Ross is going to have to play a much more honest game. Again, he can't really kill out of these permanents right now, too, because there's a Welding Jar in play. So Phyrexian Revoker, Grafdigger's Cage, unless Ross has chained together multiple artifact removal spells, they are going to be safe. Yeah,
basically needs running Abrupt Decays or like Abrupt Decay, Viridian Shaman, something like that. Okay, and if you can't activate your Wirewood Symbiote, may as well swing for 1.
I like the attack here.
Sure.
Free point.
Yeah, I mentioned plan C is Elvish Visionary. I think something like plan F or G is attack with 1/1s.
But you can see this game is lining up where if Syed can find Whip Flare, it's going to be hard for Ross to function.
Needs Whip Flare. Notably, needs a way to cast it. And Ross is going to play a Heritage Druid, use Quirion Ranger to bounce his Bayou and replay it and pass the turn.
Well, there's step 1 towards Whip Flare.
So Mox Opal shows up. That is live and making all the colors. And notably giving Syed a 3rd mana source for things like Etch Champion, Master of Ethereum, and there is an Etch Champion. So that'll put the stop on those 1/1 beats for sure. And Ross does have Abrupt Decay number 1.
I have to imagine this is worth a Welding Jar here.
I would hope so. Yep, and Syed does regenerate his Grafdigger's Cage. You don't see very many tapped Grafdigger's Cages.
It's a rarity.
And actually, I do see Abrupt Decay number 2 sitting in Ross's hand.
So he's going to be able to break out of this.
So the plan then, I suppose, for Ross, Abrupt Decay the Grafdigger's Cage, untap, natural order, and conjure up a Progenitus or a Crater Hoof. From this board, actually, Crater Hoof I don't think does the job on its own.
Just depends. Ross may want to wait here. The reason is if Syed plays a Whip Flare here, he may want to instead Abrupt Decay the Revoker, unlock the Symbiote, and get his board rebuilt a little bit.
Okay.
But I do believe that you are correct. He's going to end up Abrupt Decaying something here. Grafdigger's Cage if Syed does nothing threatening. Revoker if he has to.
Yep.
And then go from there.
And Syed has a Vault Scourge, which is not the Whip Flare he's looking for. And plays out the 2nd Vault Scourge. I believe that's his last card in hand. Going to activate Inkmoth Nexus. Get in for 1. 1 poison to go with that 1 actual. And there's the 2nd Abrupt Decay. Yeah, Ross didn't actually have enough mana to Abrupt Decay and Natural Order. He would have if that Wirewood Symbiote was an elf or was able to be activated, I believe.
So now Ross is going to be moving pretty quickly here.
So yeah, currently can generate 3 mana by tapping his 2 lands and then bouncing a land with Quirion Ranger and replaying it. But any other elf, and there is another Heritage Druid in his hand, is going to allow him to cast Natural Order.
You can see Ross here furiously doing the math here, making sure that he can go off here, use Natural Order, have enough power to flow through the toughness that Syed can bring.
Yeah, plays out Nettle Sentinel, 2nd Heritage Druid. That is plenty of mana, and got to put some extra creatures into play to make that Crater Hoof just a little bit better and leave him with a couple more creatures in play that have been there since the turn began and can attack.
So Crater Hoof is worth plus 36, 41, 42, 43, 44, minus 2, 4, 5, plus 2. Yeah, this is lethal by more than 20, I believe.
Yeah, Crater Hoof tends to do that. When it shows up, it shows up big.
Yeah.
And Ross Merriam going to take it home, going to move to 6-1, and in pretty good position to repeat his performance a couple weeks ago in Providence.
Yeah, and for Syed, a good run here, 5-0, but the camera was not friendly to him. His match against Dan Jordan, pretty unfortunate, and Ross there really needed 2 copies of Abrupt Decay to be able to do his thing.
Yeah, that definitely felt like a really strong open for Syed. The Grafdigger's Cage, probably the most important card in the matchup post board, and Welding Jar basically a backup Grafdigger's Cage in this instance. But Ross had it.
Yep, so there you go, Ross Merriam, 6-1, still in a shot to make the elimination rounds here. Very significant, of course, for the Season 3 player race, where Ross is on the outside looking in right now. Alex Bertensini and Joe Lissette, but definitely within striking distance.
Yeah,